I always thought grief came in waves. Turns out, it's more like a punch, sharp, sudden, leaving you staring at the world wondering why the air still moves when the person you loved doesn't. My father died on a Thursday. A quiet morning. Too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you realize the house will never sound the same again. My brother, Matthew, called me first. He didn't cry. He didn't stutter. He didn't say anything except get to the lawyer's office at 3. Dad's will is being read. No, how are you holding up? No, are you okay? Just an order. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. Not because of what he said, but how he said it. Cold, efficient. Like he'd been waiting for this. I walked into the lawyer's office exactly on time. Not early. Not late. Just enough to show respect. Matthew was already there. Leg crossed, wristwatch glittering under the fluorescent lights, phone in his hand, tapping non-stop. He looked like a man sitting in line to pick up a prize he'd ordered months ago. I sat across from him. He didn't look up. Dad used to call us the balanced scales. Matthew, the older brother, the favorite in Mom's eyes. Me, the quieter one. Dad's shadow. The one who fixed things when they broke. Funny how the scales never really balanced. The lawyer walked in. Older man, stiff suit, too thin tie. Glasses perched on the edge of his nose. He cleared his throat. Thank you for coming. Your father left very clear instructions. Matthew straightened like a king preparing for his coronation. I stayed still. The lawyer continued. Your father's estate, the ranch, the land, the lake house, investments, holdings, and liquid assets, totaling approximately $9 million, go to like a stone dropped into black water. Matthew shrieked. Not big, not showy. Just enough that I caught it. The lawyer turned to me next, clearing his throat again. And to you, Daniel. He slid a small box across the table. Your father left this. I opened it. Inside was a wristwatch. Old, leather-worn, cracked, face scratched, barely ticking. My father's, the one he wore doing ranch work, fixing fences, changing oil, teaching me how to drive when I was 16. It was worth maybe $20. Maybe. Matthew raised an eyebrow. You sure that's all Dad left him? He asked. The lawyer simply nodded. Matthew leaned back, victorious. Guess Dad knew who could actually manage things. I ignored him. I held the watch. It felt heavier than $9 million ever could. The meeting ended. Matthew shook the lawyer's hand like he'd just signed a sports contract. He didn't even look at me when he walked out. And I didn't follow him. I stayed in the parking lot for a long time, watching people go about their afternoons like nothing in the universe had shifted, like my father hadn't chosen one son and overlooked the other. I checked the watch in my palm. Not for time. For the feeling. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was confusion. A 6-foot-deep confusion that settled in the center of my chest. Dad wasn't unfair. Not once. Not in 53 years. He wouldn't do this. Unless he had a reason. A big one. The sun set. Shadows stretched. Street lights flickered on. And then, at 2:03 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. At first I let it buzz. But something inside me, instinct or fate, told me to answer. Hello, I said, voice cracked from sleep. A calm voice responded. Mr. Hale. I apologize for the hour. My name is Reed Marlowe. I'm a lawyer. Your father asked me to contact you only after the first will was read. My heart stopped. I sat up straight in bed. What are you talking about? He exhaled. Your father created a second document. One no one else knows about. Not your brother. Not the other attorney. My pulse accelerated. A second document. The lawyer continued softly. And Mr. Hale. This one wasn't about money. I swallowed hard. What was it about? I whispered. There was a beat of silence. Then he said, it's about the truth your father kept hidden for 30 years. My blood ran cold. Hidden truth. 30 years. Not about money. My knees went weak just hearing it. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't inherit. This was a secret. A secret big enough to divide a family. Big enough to burn everything down. Big enough that Dad couldn't let it die with him. And somehow, I was the one he trusted with. The lawyer's voice on the phone was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that means the next words will change your life in a way you can't undo. "Mr. Hale," he repeated, "your father left a second document. A sealed one. Hidden from everyone, including your brother." I swung my legs off the bed, gripping the phone tighter. "What kind of document?" I asked. "A personal affidavit," he said. "In plain terms, a confession." My breath caught. A confession. Not a letter. Not a note. Not a sentimental goodbye. A confession. The word echoed in my chest like thunder rolling across empty land. "For 30 years, he said softly, your father carried a truth. He instructed me to give it only to you. No one else." I rubbed a hand down my face. "Why me?" I whispered. There was a long pause, a meaningful one. Then he answered in a tone that made every hair on my arms stand up. "Because it concerns you directly." Ice slid down my spine. I suddenly needed air. Needed to move. Needed answers. "When can we meet?" I asked. There was no hesitation. "Now," I repeated. "Yes," he said. "Your father insisted that once you were contacted, you come without delay," he said. And I quote, "My son will understand the urgency." Urgency. That word never meant anything good in my family. I grabbed my jeans, my jacket, my truck keys. "What's your address?" I asked. He gave it. It was on the opposite side of town, in a quiet part of the city. A place where people with secrets went to keep them. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, ending the call. Driving through the empty streets at 2:15 a.m. felt surreal. The city was asleep, glowing only with streetlights and old neon signs. My headlights cut through the darkness like a blade. And in that darkness, my thoughts spiraled. Why a second will? Why the secrecy? Why me and not Matthew? Why a confession? And what truth could Dad have carried for 30 years, buried so deep that he didn't dare trust the official lawyer with it? By the time I pulled into the address, a brick building with ivy crawling up the side, my pulse was pounding. A single light glowed from a window on the 3rd floor. He was waiting. The door opened before I even knocked. "Mr. Hale?" the man asked. He was in his late 60s. Silver hair. Sharp eyes. A face carved by time and secrets. "Yes," I said, stepping inside. He locked the door behind us. Locked it. Not closed. Not shut. Locked. That was the moment everything inside me tightened. We sat across from each other at a small wooden table. No photos on the walls. No family pictures. No clutter. Just books, papers, and a single safe embedded in the floor. "Your father," he began, "was an honorable man. But he was also human, and he made a choice 30 years ago that shaped both your lives." My heart hammered. He leaned down, unlocked the floor safe and lifted out a sealed envelope. Thick, heavy, red wax covering the seal. My father's handwriting on the front. "To Daniel. Only him, no one else." My throat tightened. He said it in front of me. I did not read it. The lawyer said, "Per your father's orders." I stared at the envelope. It felt radioactive, powerful, dangerous. Before I opened it, I asked, "Was Matthew mentioned anywhere in this?" "No," he said. "Your brother inherited the estate because your father believed the land belonged to the one who wanted it. The one who cared for it." I frowned. "Matthew hasn't touched that land in years." The lawyer tilted his head. "Exactly." That single word struck something deep. He continued, There was nothing in the official will for you because your father didn't think you needed the land or the money. Why not? Because, he said quietly, he believed you needed the truth more. My breath hitched. He nodded toward the envelope. It's time. My fingers shook as I broke the wax seal. The paper inside was thick, old, as if he'd written it long before he ever needed it delivered. My father's handwriting, bold, confident, unmistakable, covered the page. It wasn't a letter. It was a story, a memory, a confession. I read the first line out loud. Daniel, I owe you the truth about the night you were born. The room spun. I kept reading. Your mother didn't know the full story. I kept it from her, from Matthew, from the entire family. But you deserve to know. You didn't come into this world the way you think. My hands tightened around the paper. 31 years ago, I made a choice that saved your life, but cost me something I've carried ever since. I swallowed hard. What the hell? The lawyer stayed silent. I continued reading, my heart pounding. The boy who was supposed to die wasn't you. The words blurred. I blinked hard. What? I kept going. Your brother was born first. He wasn't breathing. No movement, no pulse. The doctors worked on him until they said there was nothing else they could do. I froze. I felt sick. When you were born minutes later, healthy, crying, strong, I made a choice no father should ever have to make. I gripped the edge of the table. I told the doctor to write Matthew's name on the chart of the living child. I couldn't breathe. The room shrank. My chest tightened like a fist squeezing around my ribs. I told them you were born first, that you were the one who wasn't breathing. My mouth went dry. I switched you, to protect your mother, to protect her from losing her firstborn. Tears stung my eyes, and for 30 years, the world has believed Matthew was the firstborn heir. But the truth is, you are. My pulse thrashed in my ear. The lawyer's voice was barely above a whisper. That's why your father left the estate to Matthew and the truth to you. I dropped the paper. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't think. The lawyer leaned forward, voice steady. Your father loved you so much that he lived with a secret that tore him apart. Because the truth wasn't about inheritance. My jaw clenched, because now I understood, finally, fully. The truth was about identity, he said. And then he spoke the last words of the night. Words that shattered the world I'd lived in for decades. Daniel, you are the true firstborn son, the heir, the one your father believed was strong enough to carry the truth. My entire life tilted. Everything my father ever did, every look, every silence, every moment of distance or closeness, suddenly rewrote itself in my mind. I wasn't disinherited. I wasn't forgotten. I wasn't less worthy. I wasn't the overlooked son. I was the one Dad trusted with the truth that would have destroyed the family if anyone else knew. And suddenly the watch in my pocket felt heavier than the entire $9 million my brother inherited. Because now I knew Dad didn't leave me nothing. He left me everything that mattered. I don't remember standing up. I just remember the chair scraping back and the floor tilting beneath me like the building itself couldn't hold the weight of what I'd just learned. The lawyer remained still, hands folded, eyes lowered, not out of shame, but out of respect, like he knew there were no words that could soften this. My heartbeat wasn't a pulse anymore. It was a pounding hammer. 30 years believing Matthew was the firstborn, the heir, the one Dad trusted with the land, the one Dad was closest to. But it was all a lie, or worse, a half-truth with a full cost. I gripped the edge of the table. Why? My voice cracked. Why would he do that to himself? To me? The lawyer exhaled slowly, like he'd been waiting for that question. Your father's firstborn died on the table, he said softly, and he couldn't bear the thought of your mother losing her first child. He couldn't bear the thought of her breaking. I closed my eyes. Mom. Dad always said she wasn't built for heartbreak. She felt too deeply, too intensely. Losing a baby. It would have destroyed her. The lawyer continued. He chose to let the world believe the dead child was you, because you were strong, healthy, and he knew you could carry that burden. A burden. That word hit harder than the truth itself. And Matthew, I whispered. The lawyer folded his hands. To protect the illusion, he said. Your father gave Matthew the inheritance, the heir's role, the land, everything the firstborn traditionally receives. I swallowed hard. So Matthew inherited $9 million. My voice grew strained because he inherited a life that wasn't actually his. The lawyer didn't speak. He didn't have to. The silence confirmed everything. Suddenly the watch in my pocket, the only thing Dad left me in the official will, felt heavier than gold. Because Dad didn't leave me an object. He left me a legacy he couldn't put on paper. The truth he couldn't speak out loud. A truth too dangerous for a courtroom. A truth he carried alone. A truth he put into my hands instead of Matthew's. Because he knew Matthew would break under it. But I wouldn't. Why now? I asked. Why? After 30 years. The lawyer leaned forward. Because your father always believed a man should know who he really is before he turns 55. I blinked. What? He told me. The lawyer said, a man's identity becomes permanent at 55. By then, he deserves to know whether he built his life on truth or convenience. I stared at him. How long have you had this? I asked. 17 years, he answered. Your father wrote it when you were 16. 16. The year Dad taught me how to use a wrench. 16. The year he cried secretly in the garage after Matthew got arrested for the first time. 16. The year he stared at me long and hard after my first heartbreak, and said, you remind me of the boy I lost. 16. The year he began treating me differently and I never understood why. Now I knew. He saw two lives. The one I lived and the one I should have lived. The lawyer spoke again, voice softer. He wanted to tell you for years. He came to see me many times, but every time he hesitated. He didn't want to break you into pieces before you were ready to put yourself back together. My throat tightened. At 53 I finally understood. Dad didn't choose Matthew over me. He chose a lie to protect my mother and spent the rest of his life trying to protect me from the truth. And suddenly the watch wasn't a consolation prize. It was a message. A symbol. A reminder that Dad knew what time it was when it was finally my time to know. What am I supposed to do with this? I asked. The lawyer looked me dead in the eyes. That is entirely up to you. Do I tell my brother? That choice will change everything. He inherited money that wasn't meant for him. He inherited a life that wasn't meant for him. The lawyer corrected. The money is the smallest part of it. I felt my stomach twist. What would happen if I told him? I asked. The lawyer sighed. Matthew's entire identity would collapse. His place in the family, his birth order, his inheritance, his past, his future. Everything. So Dad kept it secret to protect him. Yes, my voice trembled. But he trusted me with it. Because you can carry it. The lawyer said. And because you always have. A single tear hit the table before I even felt it fall. The lawyer slid a second envelope across the table. This was recorded on video. He said. A message from your father. Filmed 2 weeks before he died. He asked me to give it to you after you read the letter. My heart stopped. A video of my father, his voice, his face, his final words. My hands shook as I reached for it. The lawyer placed a gentle hand on mine. Wait, he said. There is one more thing you need to see before you watch it. I frowned. What thing? He stood. Walked to a filing cabinet. Unlocked a lower drawer and pulled out a thick envelope sealed with blue wax. This, he said, placing it carefully in front of me. is the official hospital birth record from the night you and Matthew were born. I swallowed hard. Your father ordered the hospital to conceal the truth, but he kept the originals. The envelope felt heavy, sacred, terrifying. I slid the documents out. Birth certificates, real ones, not the amended versions. I stared at them. Baby A, Daniel Hale, born 1142. Strong vitals. Baby B, infant Hale, born 11:38 p.m. No pulse. Resuscitation failed. Pronounced deceased after 22 minutes. My lungs tightened. Matthew was not Matthew. He was the child who died. The name wasn't even written on the original document. My father had given him mine. I sank back in my chair. My identity shifted again from forgotten son to protected secret, to living reminder of a choice that saved my mother and rewrote our family's entire history. The lawyer finally spoke. Your father didn't leave you money. He nodded toward the document. He left you the truth. I closed the folder slowly. My voice was barely a whisper. What do I do now? The lawyer didn't hesitate. You go home, he said. You breathe. You let this settle. And tomorrow, he leaned forward, you decide whether you want to tell your brother that the life he's living was never supposed to be his. My heart twisted painfully. And if I don't tell him, I asked. Then, the lawyer said gently, you must carry the same burden your father carried. I stood. Shaky, uneven, changed. The lawyer looked at me with sympathy that felt genuine. Daniel, whatever choice you make, your father believed you were the only one strong enough to make it. I slipped the watch from my pocket, worn, scratched, barely ticking, but still alive. Just like me. Thank you, I said quietly. Good luck, Mr. Hale, he replied. As I walked out of that office, down the stairs into the freezing night air, I finally understood something my father must have known his whole life. Some inherit money, some inherit land, but some inherit truth so heavy, it changes the shape of a man's soul. I got in my truck, closed the door, held the watch tight in my hand, and whispered, Dad, what do I do with this? The watch didn't answer, but I swear in the quiet hum of its faint ticking, I felt it. I drove home on autopilot. Not thinking, not processing, just moving. The documents sat in the passenger seat like a living thing. The birth certificates, the handwritten confession, the video I hadn't watched yet. Every red light I'd glance over at them, and every time I'd feel my breath catch. The truth wasn't a story anymore. It wasn't a theory. It was paper, ink, dates, times, vitals, facts, and I didn't know what was heavier, knowing the truth, or knowing my father had carried it alone for 3 decades. By the time I pulled into my driveway, dawn was breaking over the horizon. The sky bruised purple, then pink, then gray. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I just sat at my kitchen table with the watch in one hand and the envelope in the other, until the sun fully rose. Around 9:12 a.m., the inevitable happened. My phone buzzed. Matthew. I stared at the name, at the man I'd grown up chasing, comparing myself to, resenting, defending, forgiving. My brother. The brother who inherited everything. Everything except the truth. I answered. Where were you last night? He asked immediately. No greeting. Just accusation. With a lawyer, I said. He scoffed. Trying to dispute the will? Don't embarrass yourself. I'm not disputing anything. Good, he shot back. Because Dad made his choice, and it's time for you to accept that. You got what you got. I closed my eyes. The shaking in his voice told me everything I needed to know. Matthew wasn't calling to check on me. He was calling because he felt threatened. Not by the money, by the idea of me challenging the story of our lives. He didn't know anything yet. Not a detail. Not a word. But deep down, Matthew always sensed things before they hit. And this was a storm big enough to wipe out the world he'd built. I need to see you, I said. He laughed, short, sharp, mocking. Now you want to talk. After you storm out of the lawyer's office like a child. I didn't storm out. You ran, he said. Same thing. I swallowed the anger rising in my throat. Matthew. This is important. So is my time, he said. You can have 10 minutes. I didn't answer. Because right then a sickly chill crawled across my skin. I heard voices. Outside. I turned toward the window. Matthew was standing in my driveway, phone still pressed to his ear, and when I looked at him through the glass, I swear time stopped. His face wasn't just irritated. It wasn't smug. It wasn't mocking. It was afraid. Deeply afraid. Like he'd been up all night too. Like his gut knew something earth-shattering was coming. I opened the door. He ended the call immediately, shoving his phone into his pocket. What's going on? He demanded. Why do you look like you haven't slept? Come inside, I said. No, he replied instant. Not until you tell me what the hell you were doing with some mystery lawyer at 2 a.m. The panic in his voice was undeniable. And strangely sad. I stepped aside, ignoring his protest. Just come in. After a beat, he entered. Shoulders tense, jaw locked. Eyes darting around like he expected bad news to jump out of the walls. Sit, I told him. He didn't. Daniel. What's going on? You're scaring me. The irony almost made me laugh. I reached into the folder, pulled out the first document. Slid it across the table. The birth certificates. Matthew stared at them. Confused. What is this? Read. He frowned. Picked them up. Confusion turned to curiosity. Curiosity turned to discomfort. Discomfort turned to outright panic. He shook his head. What is this supposed to mean? He asked. His voice had lost its confidence. His bravado. I was born first, he said. Like a reflex. I was first. You weren't, I said softly. Matthew looked at me, eyes wide, glossing with something dangerously close to tears. Don't. He swallowed. Don't mess with me like this. I'm not. He looked back at the papers. Why? Why is there no nay? He whispered, touching baby B's certificate with trembling fingers. Because that child never lived long enough to be named, I said quietly. His breathing changed. Quick, sharp, shallow. No, he whispered. No. This isn't real. Dad wouldn't. Why would he lie? He didn't lie, I said. He protected Mom. And then he protected you. Matthew backed away from the table. Protected me. He choked. From what? From being dead. In a way, yes. His knees buckled. He dropped into the chair like his body abandoned him. No, he muttered, shaking his head violently. I'm the firstborn. I'm the heir. Dad always said. Dad said a lot of things, I replied gently. And some of them he said to protect you. Matthew pressed both hands to his hair. He looked like he might rip it out. So what are you saying? He whispered. That I'm, what? A replacement. A stand-in. A lie. I felt my own throat tighten. You're my brother, I said. That never changes. He looked up with watery eyes. Was I supposed to die? His voice broke. Is that what this means? That I'm not the son he wanted? No, I said, stepping closer. You're the son he saved. In the only way he knew how. Matthew looked down at his shaking hands. For the first time in our lives, we weren't older and younger brother. Not the favorite and the forgotten. Not the heir and the spare. We were two men standing in the wreckage of a truth bigger than either of us. He finally whispered. Why? Why did he tell you? Why not me? I sat down across from him. Because he knew it would break you, I said honestly. And he knew I could carry it. Matthew closed his eyes as tears slipped down. The proudest man I knew, crumbling. Then he whispered words that shattered me. I lived a life that wasn't mine. I reached across the table, hand steady. Voice steady. Maybe. But you lived. And that's what Dad wanted. He shook his head violently. But you. He pointed at me. Voice cracking. You're the firstborn. You're the one who deserved the land. The money. Everything. I don't want any of that, I said. Dad gave you the inheritance he thought would keep the family whole. He gave me the truth he couldn't die with. Matthew stared at me. A long, trembling stare. Then he whispered, "So what happens now?" I took a breath. This was the decision. The one Dad had left for me. The burden. The responsibility. The inheritance no one could see. Now, I said softly, we decide together whether this truth belongs to both of us, or stays buried with him. Matthew's lip quivered. Do you want it buried? He asked. I looked at him. Really looked. For the first time I saw not a rival, not the golden child, not the man who inherited everything. I saw a brother, a man drowning in a truth he never asked for. I said slowly, to make the choice Dad trusted me to make. Matthew swallowed hard. And what choice is that? I closed the folder, looked him in the eye, and said, the choice that keeps this family from falling apart. Matthew stared at me, the documents trembling in his hands, his breath unsteady. The same man who once talked over me at family dinners, who wore confidence like armor, who inherited $9 million without blinking, now looked like a child who lost his way in a crowd. What choice keeps the family together? He whispered. I sat across from him, feeling the weight of Dad's voice echoing through the room even though he'd been gone for days. The one that honors the life Dad built, I said, and the one that doesn't destroy yours. He bowed his head into his palms. Daniel, I don't know who I am anymore. I swallowed hard. Neither did I, because we hadn't just discovered a secret. We'd discovered a fault line beneath our entire family, and it was still shaking. Look at me, I said. He lifted his eyes, red and wet but searching. You're my brother, I said. You've always been my brother, and that doesn't change because of a technicality. A birth order. A document. I lived a lie, he whispered. And you lived without what you deserved. I lived with Dad, I replied. And that was worth more than land or money. The words surprised even me, but they were true. Dad didn't give me wealth. He gave me the truth. And in giving me the truth, he gave me identity. Something Matthew never truly had. Matthew's voice quivered. So, what do we do? I took a deep breath. This stays between us, I said. He blinked. You're not going to tell Mom? No. What about the lawyers? The estate? The courts? No. He looked stunned. Daniel, you're the rightful heir. Maybe, I said. But the real heir, the man Dad trusted to carry the weight of the truth, was me. Not the land, not the money. The truth. I tapped the sealed envelope containing Dad's video. And this, I said, is the rest of my inheritance. Matthew looked at it like it might burn him. Don't you want to watch it with me? He asked hesitantly. I shook my head. No. Dad meant this for me. Just me. The way he meant the land for you. He exhaled shakily. You're a better man than me. No, I'm not, I said. I've been angry at you half my life, and jealous the other half. His laugh came out cracked, broken. I thought you hated me. I thought you looked down on me. He looked down ashamed. I nodded. I know. We sat in silence. Not the awkward, angry kind we used to have. A different kind. The kind that happens when two pieces finally click into place after years of being forced apart. He wiped his eyes. Daniel, is it wrong that I feel relief that Dad didn't choose me to carry the truth? No, I said. It means Dad knew you. He protected you. He loved you. He nodded slowly. And he loved you, he whispered, more deeply than he ever showed. I touched the watch in my pocket. I know. Walked to the window, stared out at the sunlight hitting my truck. What happens now? He asked. Now, I said. You live the life Dad wanted you to have. And you, I held up the watch. I live the life Dad knew I'd have. He turned, eyes softening. Daniel, you should at least take something. Money. Land. Anything. I shook my head. I don't need anything. He frowned. Why? I looked at him. Really looked at the brother who inherited everything except clarity. And I said, because Dad didn't leave me nothing. He left me the truth, and that was the inheritance meant for the son strong enough to carry it. Matthew's breath shook. Do I deserve what I got? I stepped forward. You didn't take anything from me, I said. You didn't steal a life. You lived the one Dad built for you. He looked at me with a grief I recognized. The kind that comes from learning your entire identity is built on someone else's heartbreak. What if I can't be that man anymore, he whispered. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to be Dad's firstborn, you just have to be my brother. He closed his eyes. A tear slipped down. Thank you, he whispered, for not destroying me with this. It would have destroyed both of us. We stood there, in the quiet morning light, in the home where I'd lived a simpler life, the life of the second son, a life I suddenly realized I was grateful for. Matthew finally said, whatever Dad gave you, watch it. He wanted you to hear his voice one last time. I will, I said. When I'm ready. He nodded, took a shaky breath and walked toward the door. He paused in the doorway. Daniel, he said softly. Yeah? Dad wasn't wrong, he whispered. You really are the stronger one. Then he left. I sat alone for a long time. Just me. The watch. The papers. The sealed video. Finally, when the house was quiet and my heartbeat slowed to something human again, I pressed play. Dad's face filled the screen. Older, tired, but smiling. Danny, he said softly, if you're watching this, you finally know. And I'm proud of you. Not because you're the firstborn, not because you carried the truth, but because you became the man I always hoped one of my sons would be. He smiled sadly. You and Matthew, you're both my boys. One inherited my land, the other inherited my heart. My breath caught. I love you, he said. Now take care of your brother. He needs you more than the money ever needed him. The video ended. I sat back. Tears falling for the first time since he passed. Not out of grief, out of understanding. Dad didn't leave me out. He didn't forget me. He didn't choose Matthew over me. He chose both of us, in the only way he could. Matthew got the inheritance. I got the truth, and the truth was heavier, stronger, more permanent than land or money. Because the real will, the one Dad wrote in silence, in fear, in love, was never about wealth. It was about identity, and it was mine. The story ends not with money split, but with a family rebuilt.